How do we fix this?
Oh gosh, Brand X is doing an outstanding job. Um, Obviously, Brand X has PYCC, so it's a CCP-ish course for youth. Um, so there's coaches that are like out there and they're pushing it and they're super passionate about it. But the reality, in my opinion, with kids is it starts and ends with parents. It just does. It starts and ends with parents because you don't have 8-year-olds that are going out there looking for coaches for themselves. You know what I mean? You have parents looking for coaches for their 8-year-olds. Um, and I don't even think that 8-year-old needs a coach, right? Like they just have to have a parent that understands just basic human movement and what we need to do, like what physical literacy is. So it's a lack of education on the from the parent standpoint. And that's not just in physical expression, it's also in lifestyle and nutrition. Something that's always really, really bothered me since I had my first kid 10 years ago. Gosh, it's been 10 years. Was going to restaurants and them always giving us a kids menu. And you sit down and you're like, well, fuck this. Like it's crazy the meals that kids are supposed to eat. It's insane. What you should actually do is you should take that kids menu, put it over here, put the adult menu over here, and the kids should be eating off the adult menu, and the adults should be eating off the kids menu. Why? Because kids' brains are developing, right? Kids need more nutrient based, high nutrient based meals than adults do. We're fully grown. We can get by with shitty food and all that, but kids actually can't get by on, they can get by. They're not going to sprout and they're not going to develop to their highest potential on hamburgers and french fries, right? But that's what parents think that they need to feed their kids because it's on the kids menu. And we blame parents for that. We're like, how are they fucking feeding their kids? It's because the fucking like society's telling you to feed your kids that. So if the parent doesn't know what to feed their kid, what are they going to do? They're going to look at the kids menu, they're going to give that to their kid. They're going to say, this is a picture of this, point to what you want, and that's what I'm going to get you, right? And they have like such good intentions in mind. But if they were educated and they knew that they should actually give their kids that adult menu, they probably wouldn't make those decisions. So it's the same thing with exercise. Parents just don't know, right? Like someone needs to teach parents what their kids, what development should look like for their children. And I remember reading a blog James wrote 8 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, and it was performance based, but James was like, he's like, I'm gonna propose what development in sport should look like for your kid based on where they're at. And I remember looking at that, and I had a 2-year old at the time, and I'm like, this makes a lot of sense, right? It's like it starts off like this, and then if you want it to get like this, it can get like that. But he laid out reasons as to why it looked like this at first, like just exploring new things, having different challenges, exploring those movement patterns that kids should be exploring at that time. And I kind of looked at that and I used it with I used it with my kid. I was like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. But if a kid doesn't, or if a parent doesn't know any better, and they're on their couch and they're watching college football every Saturday, and they have a 2-year-old next to them, and they're like, I want my 2-year-old to be that. What is that parent gonna do? That kid turns 4. Like, well, let's put this fucking kid in pads, and I want him to go out and run around like a chicken with his head cut off and play football. And they do that from like 4 to 14, and that's all they've ever done. And they're so specific on that one sport, and the kid fucking burns out by the time he's 15. He's like, I want to play this. Like, I've been forced to play this my entire life. This shit's boring. And now you just wasted 15 years of that kid's life in terms of physical activity and what that kid was had in front of him in terms of challenges. So yeah, that was a really long way to say that it starts and ends with the parents.
What age, like, let's go down this rabbit hole a little bit. Like, at what age do you think it's ideal for a kid to start getting a little bit more sports specific?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It depends on the sport. It depends on what that kid wants and what that parent wants. Um, because if we were to talk about ice skating or figure skating, that's a lot different than basketball, right? Um, but my advice would be to play as many sports. Like if your kid wants to play sports, play as many sports as possible for as long as possible until the kid says, I don't want to play any other sport except for this one. I think that's best practice. And if your kid falls so in love with a specific sport when they're 7, 8, 9 years old, you have to fight them on that, and you have to convince them to play other sports, but you have to have good reasons behind it. Like Colton, the kid just wanted to play football. And I'm like, dude, you're not going to just play football for the next 10 years, right? Like, he didn't want to play an instrument. He didn't want to play soccer. He didn't want to do BJJ. He didn't want to play baseball. He's like, I just want to play football because I love it. I'm like, that's awesome. But actually doing this is actually going to make you a better football player, right? Learning BJJ is going to make you a better tackler. You're going to be a better grappler. You're going to have better grip strength. You're going to have more coordination. And a light bulb went off in his head, and he's like, oh my gosh, I want to play as many sports as possible.
Yeah.
Because it's true though, right? Like, doing a lot of shit makes you really good at a lot of shit, but it also makes you really good at this specific thing because you learn how to manipulate and move your body and how to overcome physical challenges in this specific sport because you did it in a different way over here. You just look at a lot of, let me look at my situation specifically. Me playing baseball very, very competitively made me a way better football player because my hand-eye coordination got really, really good at catching footballs, right? From, trying to hit this little thing coming at me 80 miles per hour. So there's a lot of carryover in sport and experiences, right? Like, if you get so married to one sport over a long period of time and you get to a point where you're like, I'm just tired of this. It's like, what are your options? You're probably going to walk away from sport and physical activity. And I'm not saying every kid needs to play sports, but I think it's extremely beneficial for kids to have that outlet. I'm not saying they need to be, the best at that sport year round. But it's a really positive outlet for kids to express themselves physically. There's a lot that comes along with like team sports and stuff like that for kids.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, the opportunity to, socialize and work together as a team for a common goal. Like, there's got to be a lot of growth inside of that.
Yeah, but don't be a 9-year-old exercising just to get better at that sport.
No,